In the grand, dusty attic of history, some artifacts are more important than others. For the British Empire in the 1950s, the most precious heirloom was a 120-mile-long ditch in Egypt. The Suez Canal wasn't just a waterway, it was the Imperial carotid artery, the shortcut that kept oil flowing and the illusion of global power flickering. Britain, having recently misplaced India and a few other key assets, was clinging to this canal like a security blanket. They controlled the Suez Canal Company, a private entity that was technically international, but really, let's be honest, it was their pet project. It represented the old way of doing things, drawing lines on maps and assuming nobody who actually lived there would mind. A flawless and time-honored strategy. Enter Gamal Abdel Nasser, former army officer, new president of Egypt, and a man with absolutely zero patience for lingering colonial vibes. Nasser was the charismatic face of pan-Arab nationalism, a movement built on the rather popular idea that Arab countries should, run themselves. His big dream was the Aswan High Dam, a mega project to modernize Egypt. He asked the US and Britain for funding. They said yes. Then, looking at his friendly chats with the Soviet bloc, they very publicly said no. They assumed this would put him in his place. It's a classic diplomatic maneuver called poking the bear and being surprised when it mauls you. So, on July 26, 1956, Nasser gave a speech in Alexandria. For 3 hours, he listed every complaint against imperial powers, a historical air grievances. Then he casually dropped a code word, de Lesseps, the canal's builder. And Egyptian forces simultaneously seized every single Suez Canal Company office. From the podium, he announced the company was nationalized, effective immediately. The canal now belonged to Egypt, and its revenue would build the Aswan Dam. In London and Paris, there was a collective aristocratic gasp. Someone had touched their stuff. This, of course, could not stand. It was a matter of principle, and by principle, they meant profit. The British Prime Minister was Anthony Eden, a man who looked like he was perpetually recovering from bad news. Eden saw Nasser not as a nationalist leader, but as an Egyptian Mussolini, a comparison he made constantly. Having famously advocated for appeasing the actual Mussolini and his German friend in the 1930s, Eden was now determined not to make the same mistake twice, even if the situation was completely different. France, meanwhile, was furious because Nasser was supporting Algerian rebels fighting for independence. So you had one empire having a PTSD flashback and another trying to crush a rebellion, a perfectly stable and rational basis for foreign policy. Since just invading Egypt would look a bit imperial, they needed a pretext. So, in October 1956, high-ranking officials from Britain, France, and Israel met secretly in a villa at Suez, France. The resulting document, the Protocol of Suez, laid out one of the most comically elaborate plots in modern history. Step 1. Israel would invade Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. Step 2. Britain and France would issue an ultimatum to both sides to stop fighting. Step 3. When Egypt, the country that was just invaded, inevitably refused, Britain and France would heroically intervene as peacemakers to protect the canal. They would then occupy the canal zone. It was a plan so cunning you could put a tail on it and call it a weasel. On October 29th, the plan went into motion. Israel's part went swimmingly. Their military was fast and effective, storming across the Sinai. The Anglo-French part, codenamed Operation Musketeer, was less a swift military strike and more a slow, bureaucratic unraveling. They issued their ultimatum as planned. Nasser, predictably, told them where to stick it. Then the British and French started a bombing campaign, but their actual invasion fleet was moving from Malta at the speed of a tired snail. It gave the entire world, including some very important people in Washington, plenty of time to notice that the peacemakers were dropping bombs. In the White House, President Dwight D. Eisenhower was incandescent with rage, not for any high-minded moral reasons, but because his supposed allies had launched a colonial war in the middle of his re-election campaign without telling him. He was also terrified this would push the entire Arab world into the arms of the Soviet Union, which was a slightly bigger problem than Eden's hurt feelings. Eisenhower got on the phone with Eden and was, to put it mildly, not pleased. He felt betrayed. The special relationship was suddenly looking very, very conditional. Eisenhower decided against sending troops. He had a much more powerful weapon, the global financial system. The invasion had caused a run on the British pound. Britain was burning through its currency reserves at an alarming rate. The U.S. Treasury Secretary informed London that America would not only block an emergency IMF loan, but would also start selling its vast reserves of UK government bonds. This wasn't a warning shot, it was a financial execution order. The British economy would collapse. Suddenly, the strategic importance of the canal seemed a lot less important than the ability to, pay for things. Just to make things spicier, the Soviet Union decided to get involved. As they were busy brutally crushing the Hungarian Revolution, they needed a good distraction. So Premier Khrushchev sent notes to London and Paris, casually threatening them with nuclear rocket attacks. Was it a bluff? Almost certainly. The Soviets didn't have reliable long-range missiles yet. But when someone mentions turning your capital city into a radioactive crater, you tend to take it seriously. This just made Eisenhower even more desperate to end the crisis before it spiraled into World War III over a canal. Cornered by his best friend, threatened by his worst enemy, and with his country going broke, Eden had no choice. On November 6th, he announced a ceasefire. His paratroopers had been on the ground in Egypt for less than 2 days. The UN sent in its first ever peacekeeping force, the Blue Helmets, to oversee the withdrawal. British and French soldiers, who had been told they were retaking a vital imperial asset, packed up and went home in utter humiliation. They had won every military engagement and suffered a catastrophic political defeat. The operation was a success, but the patient died. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Anthony Eden resigned a few months later, his health and reputation shattered. Nasser became an undisputed hero across the Arab world, the man who stood up to 3 empires and won. The canal remained firmly in Egyptian hands. But the biggest shift was global. Britain's bluff had been called. It was no longer a first-rate world power capable of independent action. That role now clearly belonged to the United States and the Soviet Union. The Suez Crisis didn't cause the British Empire's decline, but it was the moment the world pulled back the curtain and realized the wizard was just an old man with a microphone. The Suez Affair is a masterclass in how not to manage decline. It's a story of nostalgia mistaken for strategy, of personal grudges dictating foreign policy. It proved that gunboats and paratroopers were becoming less effective than currency markets and superpower approval. Power had changed its address. Britain learned the hard way that it was now the junior partner in the special relationship, a lesson it would have to relearn a few more times. Ultimately, the crisis was the dying, theatrical gasp of an old imperial world, a final, ill-advised adventure before the lights went out for good. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Thanks for watching, nerds!